So that's what they are. And then if you want me to, I can also describe to you what the, like what's the advantage of being tuned into this, if you know what I mean. Like, what do you get out of it if you do it?
Yeah.
And after teaching it for, Jerry and I have taught it together for 15 years. At this point, I live in a 9-dimensional state of consciousness all the time. It just becomes you finally. And so what happens with this is when you're in tune with the first dimension, the center of the earth, you have access to the Akashic records, and specifically the cosmic Akashic records, because the center of the earth is in vibratory resonance with all the other planets and stars and galaxies in the universe. And so what happens for you is you literally have the ability to understand the cosmic realms. And I think this is going to be an increasingly important skill on the part of our species, because I think we are moving more and more into cosmic resonance now. And, the ability to tune into that, I think, is very important. The second dimension is very interesting. This is the realm between the iron core crystal and the crust. And the second dimension is a realm of elemental resonation with minerals and chemicals and biological energy as we get closer to the crust. And so when you tune in to the second dimension, and by the way, what do I mean tune into? Of course, this is what we teach. Each one of the dimensions has a different frequency. And by studying the teachings about these dimensions, or actually experiencing them with Jerry and me, what happens is you start to be able to feel the difference between each one. So when I say tuning into the second dimension, it actually involves slowing your body down. And when you tune into the elemental resonation, you have the opportunity to achieve absolutely perfect health. Being in tune at that level means not having to go to the doctor or the hospital, which I think is an excellent choice on this planet. Then the third dimension is pretty simple. We understand that one pretty well because we live here. And all I did in the third dimension was offer indigenous teachings about being in touch with seasonality, like equinoxes and solstices and lunar cycles, and also the 7 directions. And when you are in tune in the third dimension, you're psychic, and you know whether to take your car down a certain street or not. It's really pretty amazing when people are really tuned into 3D in an effective way. Then the fourth dimension, as I said to you when we started, is the really tricky one. Because the fourth dimension, first of all, has all the records of everything that ever happened on this planet. And that is the same thing as the Akashic records in the core, except the Akashic records of the fourth dimension are the Earth Akashic records. So this is all of history, all of evolution, all of every past life encounter that you ever had. And so as you can imagine, it's lots of fun to play with that stuff. But the adept level of the fourth dimension is to figure out how the control programs work. Because, for us, because the global elite and the various cosmic forces in the universe, whatever they are, they all work through the fourth dimensional control programs to keep humans in a state of complete confusion. And so when you really master what the global elite is up to, which of course I had lots of fun with in alchemy, what happens is you become totally free. Because when they start to hand out their BS, you don't fall for it. Like when 9/11 happened, I already knew the government did it by 1 o'clock that afternoon, if you know what I mean. The United States, the United States, Pakistani, and the Mossad in Egypt, or Israel, excuse me. In other words, if you can just watch these guys, and this is what everybody's doing right now, which is lots of fun. But I would say that probably this is the most interesting dimension, because I think in 2011 the fourth dimension is going to clarify. In other words, I think that the biggest shift that's coming at the end of this calendar is people becoming able to actually see the influences that are controlling them. And that's going to be very powerful.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Huh?
That's what I think is going on, and I probably am going to do some pretty major writing about this in the next 6 months, because I'm beginning, let me put it this way, I'm really beginning to see just exactly how they're doing it. And I think a lot of Europeans are really tuned into this one at this point. First, it's so interesting that the Pope is being exposed mainly on that planetary midline going through Germany. We've had reports of sexual abuse in Catholicism going on for 25 years, especially in the United States, but now it's coming through at the midline level.
Right.
And once people figure out what the Pope is up to, a lot of things are going to change. But we'll let that one go in case you want to go back to it. If you open fifth dimensional consciousness, you exist in a state of unconditional love and divine bliss. And it's a beautiful way to live. You know, I don't need to say too much more about that. Then, if you are in tune with the sixth dimension, you are in tune with the world of perfect form. And this is extremely useful. For example, there's an ideal Henrik body and an ideal Barbara body in the sixth dimension. And if you can tune into it, then you can do yoga and Tai Chi and sacred dance and exercise and all that and good diet. And being in tune with your ideal form enables you to go into perfect harmony and balance, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's fun to tune into all the other ideas that are in that dimension, too. It's a beautiful world. Then when we go into the seventh dimension, the issue of tuning into sound. A lot of people at this point are working with advanced sound healing techniques, because if you can just tune into the correct frequency, then immediately the correct form formulates, and then it goes right down to unconditional love and through the dimensions. So sound in the seventh dimension is an extremely subtle realm, and it probably is the dimension that's going to give us the most assistance in terms of going into oneness, because I think what's going to happen, and the Pleiadians have also told me this, what's going to happen in 2011 is our world is going to start to be immersed in the music of the spheres. And it's going to be that kind of energy that's going to move us through this. Then the eighth dimension, of course, has to do with being in touch with divine consciousness. And I've got some techniques in the book for how to do that. But what happens when you're in touch with the eighth dimension is you become completely trusting, you have faith, and you exist in a state of grace. And it's just simply the way you are when you're living at that level. And then when we get into the ninth dimension, the issue of the Mayan calendar and the contemplation of time, what I find with that dimension, I hang out with that dimension a lot, because what happens for me is I go into total mystical bliss. In other words, when you really get in touch with the essence of time and evolution and the creation of our world and species, it's just pure mystical bliss.
You know, there's so many things I want to ask you about here, but I do want to go back a little bit and touch a little bit upon Kellerman's work as well, and your book, obviously, the Mayan Code. And I reckon that you basically agree with the whole idea that the Mayan calendar and kind of describes an evolutionary path, you know, and this will be completed then, as you mentioned, in 2011, according to Kellerman, right?
Yes, yes.
And
I'm in complete agreement with him, because I keep on testing him all the time. I keep watching him week by week, you know, okay, is he on or not? And
right.
Boy, he's on. Yeah.
And this is the thing, I think he's on as well. And I remember when we had him on the program last time, we talked a little bit about actually the economic collapse and things like that. And I think he was really talking about this, that this would be implemented back in 2005, 2006 sometimes. And indeed, we are seeing that happen. But we touched upon an interesting idea which has to do with the delay of the implementation, if you will, of some of these things. That down here, so to speak, on our dimension, it actually takes a little bit of time for this to fully become implemented, because it's not until now, 4 to 6 years later, that we really can see this economic collapse kind of setting in. Do you know what I mean, Barbara?
Yeah, I do. And the economic collapse, what's really, it's so confusing for us right now, because to tell you the truth, money is energy. And it's not necessarily money that's collapsing, although money, there are various factors, the euro, the dollar, and all that. We go on a lot of details. What's really collapsing is the structures, as you know, of the national and planetary underworld. And so the financial collapse is happening because of the collapse of all those structures. And I think people do better if you just keep on focusing on letting that collapse happen, because
right.
things have to change at that level. We all know. I mean, look at the latest oil disaster. We all know that it can't continue to be this way. You know, so but the financial collapse is like a what's the right word for it? It's a factor that comes about as a result of the collapse of the planetary and national underworld structures.
Right, that kind of connects a little bit, I guess, with the fourth dimension as well. Then, in that sense, the collective mind, and it's a maybe a reflection over the ideas that things are changing and shaking up. Because also, I believe that the financial system is based on a kind of a false value system, and the time, hopefully, for that kind of false system is to go away in that sense.